The rain hammered against the windows of the small diner like bullets from heaven as Rebecca Martinez stared at her phone screen in disbelief. The notification glowed mockingly in the dim light. Eviction notice. Final warning. She had exactly 3 hours to vacate the downtown apartment she could no longer afford. Outside, Hurricane Elena was bearing down on Jacksonville with unprecedented fury, and here she sat, a former Fortune 500 CEO, counting the last $17 in her wallet. Just 18 months ago, Rebecca had been featured on the cover of Business Weekly as one of America's most innovative tech executives. Her company, Vital Connect, had revolutionized healthcare software and made her a multimillionaire before her 35th birthday. But success had come at a devastating cost. Her marriage crumbled under the weight of 16-hour workdays and constant travel. When her ex-husband won custody of their 8-year-old daughter Sophia, claiming Rebecca was an absent mother married to her career, her world began to unravel. The final blow came when her business partner embezzled $2 million and disappeared, leaving Rebecca personally liable for company debts she never knew existed. Legal fees consumed her savings. The house went first, then the car, then everything else. Pride had kept her from asking for help until it was too late. Now, as the storm of the century approached, she found herself truly alone for the first time in her life. Rebecca gathered her few remaining possessions into 2 worn suitcases and stepped into the howling wind. The rain soaked through her thin jacket within seconds. Her phone died as she tried to call another motel, the 5th one to tell her they were completely booked due to the hurricane evacuation orders. Every shelter was at capacity. Every friend she might have called lived hundreds of miles away or had written her off when the scandal broke. 3 blocks from the diner, her heel caught in a storm drain grate and snapped clean off. She stumbled forward, her suitcase bursting open and scattering her clothes across the flooding sidewalk. As she knelt in the rising water, desperately trying to salvage what little she had left, Rebecca finally broke down. The tears mixed with the rain as she realized she had nowhere to go and no one to turn to. That's when she heard the gentle voice cutting through the storm. "Miss, are you okay? Can I help you?" She looked up to see a man in his early 40s with kind brown eyes and graying temples, holding a large umbrella over both of them. He was soaked to the skin, clearly having run out of his pickup truck parked nearby with hazard lights flashing. Behind him, she could see a young boy around 10 years old watching anxiously from the passenger seat. "I'm David Chen," he said, kneeling beside her to help collect her scattered belongings. "This storm is getting dangerous. Do you have somewhere safe to ride it out?" Rebecca tried to speak but only managed a broken sob. The kindness in this stranger's voice threatened to completely undo what little composure she had left. David didn't press for details. Instead, he quietly helped her gather her things, treating each waterlogged item with the same care he might show precious treasures. "Listen," he said softly, "I don't know your situation, but nobody should be out in this storm. My son Tyler and I live just a few minutes from here. We have a guest room, hot coffee, and a warm place to dry off. No questions asked, no strings attached. Sometimes we all need a helping hand." Rebecca's first instinct was to refuse. She had been independent her entire life, building her career from nothing, never accepting charity from anyone. But as another powerful gust of wind nearly knocked her over, she realized that pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. With a trembling nod, she accepted David's offer. The Chen house was a modest 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like the mansion Rebecca had lost, but it radiated warmth and love in ways her cold corporate penthouse never had. Family photos lined the walls, showing David and Tyler at baseball games, camping trips, and school events. It was clear this was a home where people actually lived and loved, not just existed. David immediately set Rebecca up in the guest room and brought her dry clothes, apologizing that they might be too big since they belonged to his late wife. The casual mention of his wife's passing, delivered without self-pity or expectation of sympathy, told Rebecca volumes about the man who had just rescued her from the storm. As the hurricane raged outside, Tyler shyly approached Rebecca with a plate of grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. "My dad makes the best comfort food," he said with the earnest pride only a child can possess. "He says food tastes better when you share it with people who need it." Over the simple meal, Rebecca learned that David worked as a high school guidance counselor and coached Little League Baseball in his spare time. He had been raising Tyler alone since his wife Emma passed away from cancer 3 years earlier. Money was tight on a teacher's salary, but David spoke about their life with genuine contentment that Rebecca found both foreign and deeply moving. Tyler, meanwhile, was fascinated to learn that Rebecca had once run a big company. He peppered her with questions about business, showing a sharp mind and natural curiosity that reminded Rebecca painfully of her own daughter Sophia, whom she hadn't seen in 6 months due to the custody arrangement and her financial circumstances. As the evening wore on and the storm continued its assault on the house, Rebecca found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. She told them about her rise and fall, her mistakes, her regrets. David listened without judgment, offering quiet wisdom when appropriate, but mostly just providing the rare gift of genuine attention. The power went out around midnight, but David had prepared well. Candles and battery-powered lanterns created a cozy atmosphere as they sat in the living room. Tyler had fallen asleep on the couch, and David covered him with a handmade quilt that clearly held sentimental value. "Rebecca," David said quietly as they watched the boy sleep peacefully despite the storm raging outside, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you remind me of Emma in some ways. She was brilliant, driven, always pushing herself to achieve more. Sometimes I think she forgot that she was already enough, just as she was." The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow, not because they were harsh, but because they were so unexpectedly gentle and true. She had spent her entire adult life trying to prove she was enough, successful enough, important enough, valuable enough. But sitting in this humble home, watching a father's quiet devotion to his son, she began to question what enough really meant. The next morning brought crystal clear skies and the kind of brilliant sunshine that only follows devastating storms. Rebecca woke to the smell of pancakes and coffee, luxuries that felt impossibly precious after her recent struggles. She found David and Tyler in the kitchen, working together to prepare breakfast with the easy coordination of a well-practiced team. Over breakfast, Rebecca made a decision that surprised even herself. She asked Tyler about his favorite subjects in school, his dreams for the future, his challenges with math. When she learned he was struggling with fractions, she offered to tutor him. When David mentioned the school's computer lab was outdated and underfunded, Rebecca's mind began racing with possibilities. She spent the morning helping David assess storm damage to the house and neighborhood, but more importantly, she spent it observing how he interacted with his neighbors. David checked on the elderly woman next door, helped a young family clear a fallen tree from their driveway, and coordinated with other residents to ensure everyone had power and supplies. He was a natural leader, but one who led through service rather than authority. That afternoon, as they sat on the front porch watching the cleanup efforts, Rebecca made an announcement that would change both their lives forever. She told David about an idea that had been forming in her mind, a way to use her business expertise for something more meaningful than profit margins and stock prices. She wanted to start a non-profit organization focused on educational technology and mentorship for underprivileged youth. She had the knowledge and connections to make it work, but she needed a partner who understood kids, who could connect with families, who shared her newfound commitment to making a real difference in people's lives. She needed someone like David. David was initially hesitant. He loved his job as a guidance counselor and wasn't sure he was qualified for such an ambitious undertaking. But as Rebecca outlined her vision, he began to see how their skills could complement each other perfectly. Her business acumen and his educational experience, her drive and his compassion, her resources and his community connections. Tyler, who had been listening from the doorway, suddenly ran outside and hugged them both. He told them it was the best idea ever and that they could help kids like his friend Marcus, whose family couldn't afford a computer for homework. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious and settled any lingering doubts. 3 months later, the Learning Bridge Foundation held its grand opening in a renovated warehouse downtown. Rebecca had used her remaining business contacts to secure funding and donations of equipment. David had left his teaching position to become the foundation's director of programs. Together, they created after-school tutoring programs, computer literacy classes, and mentorship opportunities that served over 200 children in their first year alone. But the foundation was just the beginning of the changes that storm brought into their lives. As Rebecca and David worked side by side, their professional partnership deepened into something more profound. They discovered that their shared commitment to helping others had created a bond that neither had expected but both desperately needed. Rebecca also began rebuilding her relationship with Sophia. The girl was initially skeptical of her mother's new life, having been hurt by years of broken promises and missed events. But when she saw the way Rebecca lit up while working with the Foundation's kids, when she witnessed her mother's genuine transformation from corporate shark to community servant, Sophia began to believe that this change was real and lasting. 1 year after the storm, Rebecca stood before a crowd of donors and community leaders at the Foundation's first annual fundraising gala. She looked out at the audience and saw faces that had become dear to her. David and Tyler sitting in the front row, Sophia beside them visiting for the weekend. The elderly neighbor from David's street who now volunteered as a reading tutor. Young Marcus, Tyler's friend, who had just won a regional science fair using skills he learned in their computer lab. As Rebecca began her speech, she thought back to that terrible night when she knelt in the flooding street with her broken suitcase and broken dreams scattered around her. She thought about David's outstretched hand, Tyler's shy smile, the guest room that became a sanctuary, and the simple meal that tasted like hope. She told the crowd about the power of unexpected kindness, about how one person's willingness to help a stranger can create ripples of positive change that extend far beyond what anyone could imagine. She talked about how the storm that seemed to destroy her life had actually cleared the way for something better, something more meaningful than anything she had built before. But most importantly, she talked about the family she had found in the midst of her darkest hour. David and Tyler had given her more than shelter from the storm. They had shown her what real success looked like, what true wealth felt like, and what it meant to be enough exactly as she was. Today, the Learning Bridge Foundation operates in 12 cities across the Southeast, serving thousands of children and families. Rebecca and David were married in a small ceremony in the backyard where she first found refuge, surrounded by the community that had embraced them both. Tyler walked her down the aisle, proud to officially become her stepson, while Sophia served as maid of honor, finally secure in her mother's love and presence. The guest room where Rebecca spent that first night is now Sophia's room for her weekend visits, decorated with photos of school plays and soccer games that Rebecca never misses anymore. The dining table where they shared grilled cheese sandwiches during the storm now hosts weekly family dinners and homework sessions for Foundation kids who need extra support. Sometimes the most powerful storms in our lives aren't the ones that happen around us, but the ones that happen within us. Rebecca's storm stripped away everything she thought defined her worth, but in losing everything, she found what truly mattered. In accepting help from a stranger, she learned that strength isn't about never needing anyone, it's about being brave enough to let others care for you and then using that love to lift up others. David's simple act of kindness on a stormy night didn't just change Rebecca's life. It created a foundation that continues to change hundreds of lives every year. It brought together a family that might never have existed otherwise. It proved that sometimes the smallest gestures, offered with genuine compassion, can create the biggest miracles. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of kindness. Subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more inspiring tales that prove ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose compassion over indifference. Because in a world that can sometimes feel cold and unforgiving, we all have the power to be someone's shelter from the storm. We all have the chance to change a life forever with a simple act of unexpected kindness.